Hi there, it's Kevin with the Rogue Market here with this week's episode of the Market Monday Recap. So, this week over at my main channel, The Rogue Deck Builder, so if you haven't checked out that video yet, go and check that out before looking at this one. We talked about the methodology that I use for speccing into new sets and talked about specifically commander cards for Strixhaven. So, this is going to be the shortened TLDR version of the top 10 cards that I think are either good buys or at least you should be watching to see how the market reacts to these cards, because I think the potential in Commander is above and beyond the rest of the cards out of the set. So without further ado, let's get into the top 10 list. So let's start out with the first one, which is just kind of a duck card. This is the Wandering Archaic. Wandering Archaic is a known card. So look at the price of Wandering Archaic. It's already up to $11/$14.99 from Card Kingdom, and cool sub at $13. That is very high for a rare, but this is by far the most played card in the Strixhaven. So if you actually look at Strixhaven and are able to look at the cards that are seeing play, even though it doesn't show up for a while here, it is in 556 decks, which if you come up to the top of it, that actually doesn't surpass the Stormkilled Artist or the Archmage Emeritus. But people know that this card is just going to be a powerhouse in Commander for 5 mana whenever an opponent casts an Sorcery spell. They have to pay 2. If not, you copy it. It's another Rhystic Study. It's another Smothering Tithe card. These cards go up. It has a very, very good ability. This even has a backside with Explore the Vastlands in case you just don't want to copy as that. But you definitely want to put it on the main side of the Wandering Archaic, because it is just going to be miserable for your opponents to have to either pay 2, just like kind of the Rhystic Study, Smothering Tithe, or you to copy whatever they do. So when you kill spell, you get to copy it. Any ram spell, you get to copy it. You just get to copy everything Wandering Archaic. So the big difference between Smothering Tithe and I would say the Rhystic side, this does come out a little bit later, but it is going to be a very powerful card for Commander, very popular card for the more casual players, and I think it's just going to be a beloved card for a long time. So even though it does have this very high price tag of $11 with TCG mid, I do expect this one to continue to go up after it sees its bottom. So what I think for this particular card, the strategy will be figure out where the bottom is. Once it has reached that bottom, once you start to see it flatlining, that's when you start to pick up the copies, and be very aggressive at that point for this particular card. That's why I've got it at my number 10, because I don't know what the potential of this is going to be, where the bottom is going to be. That's going to be kind of the $1,000,000 question with the Wandering Archaic. So as you can see here, it just is played in a ton of Commander decks according to Goldfish, many of the new decks, but there is some older decks that are utilizing it, and it does work well with like the copy type spells, so anything that copies spells as well. Oh no, this one doesn't. Whenever an opponent casts an Insert Sorcery, but you get a copy spell, so any of your Magecraft stuff that works off you copying spells is going to trigger too, so it's going to have that added benefit to it. And we can see right now it is pretty flat right now. It's slightly starting to go down. Collector's Editions are going to mix in here. So again, once it does hit that flat for a consistent period of time, then it's going to be time to start picking these up very aggressively. On to my number 9, this is going to be Blot Out the Sky. So how I came to the conclusion of Blot Out the Sky is this is going to be I think another card that is more of a sleeper as far as Commander is concerned, because it does everything you want in specific decks, especially creature token-oriented black-white decks, which is very popular. That is a very popular theme in Orzhov. You don't want to blow out your own creatures. It's going to create you tokens, which is what your whole goal is. It is Sorcery Speed has that going against it for Commander, but if you drop 6 mana into this, so it's an 8 mana spell, you destroy all non-creature, non-land permanents, all the artifacts, all the pesky enchantments, all those things are destroyed. You keep your tokens, you keep anything, any other board presence that you've established as far as creatures are concerned, and then you're good to start, casting your enchantments and your artifacts. So as we progress more and more into Commander year after year, the more powerful cards tend to be enchantments and artifacts. Those are going to be the cards that are going to be removed. This does feel like a silver bullet for all of those. It affects everything on the board. Yes, it kills your own mana rocks. I understand that. But I think this card will be a good build-around card where you can build a deck where the potential is quite good for a blowout on your side, and a lot of other people lose their key things. So how I came to the conclusion of this one is just if you look at how many cards Blot Out the Sky sees play, it actually does outclass some of these other mythics that are going for a higher price tag already. So something's got to give. Either these cards go down or Blot Out the Sky goes up. And I'm assuming it's going to be the latter. Look, here's Blot Out the Sky here at 162 decks. So we find like a mythic that's above it with the Shatteric Silverclaw is going for double or even more. We have like Rowan going for more, that actually does see the same amount of decks, and we even see mythics like this Body of Research that sees lesser amount of decks that is still going for 75% more than Blot Out the Sky. So when you're identifying prices, this one is the outlier here of mythics that are undervalued, comparatively speaking, for how much they are actually seeing play with other mythics that are above that price. So I do like Blot Out the Sky for its abilities. It's exactly what you want out of Commander. Board-wise, are pretty good in it, and I think it's going to age well long term. Again, this is something you want to not be as aggressive as something like Wandering Archaic. This is something that I think is going to take a long time for it to start to gain the value, so you have time to find the deals on the Blot Out the Skies, and this is going to be a long-term spec. On to the next one, or actually we can look at some price data. It's still going down according to MTG Goldfish, but it is used in fairly amount of, these are going to be a lot of the newer decks here, but you can see some of these older decks are starting to post new. These are people who have updated their decks for Strixhaven, and it's already starting to see additions into those. So again, this gives you a little bit more of a price. $3 Mythic that does see play in Commander, I think is going to be a good long-term spec. Next up, we're going to go into a series of uncommons for our 7/6 and or 8, 7, and 6 slots. The first one being the Plume, the Forbidden. So this card I don't believe is in a Commander deck, so it does have this going for it for the Plume of the Forbidden. This is just a powerhouse for sacrifice outlets. So if you need to sacrifice many cards with just one card, Plume does the job. So it's 2 mana, it's additional cost to cast it. You sacrifice one or more creatures, and when you do, copy the spell for each creature sacrificed this way. You draw a card and you lose 1 life. This is another way of copying a lot of spells to trigger that Magecraft that can do some pretty crazy stuff. But really where this one shines, it is a good multi-sacrifice card for decks that actually care about sacrificing creatures, which is a huge Golgari strategy, huge Orzhov strategy, huge Mardu strategy, huge Jund strategy. There are many commanders in all of these color combinations recently that have wanted to sacrifice creatures. The more and more sets that have come out for Wizards of the Coast, they keep making this like a key mechanic. This is almost like to the point of +1/+1 counters now, that every set is coming out with things that want to be sacrificed. It will trigger something. So this key word on the Plume of the Forbidden, which does sacrifice your cards, I think is going to go in these decks from now until eternity. I would not shy away from uncommons. I think that uncommons have proven from Theros and Throne of Eldraine and now even Ikoria to start to go up in value, even though they are even recent sets. So the foils for these, if there are any F&M promos or something like that, I think are going to be great pickups long term for the Plume of the Forbidden. Now the next one, I guess we'll check out the price. It has actually had some price adjustment here, just around how much is actually even seeing playing like standard. So it's got that going for it. A lot of standard decks are running that, but you can see the overwhelming amount of decks that are running this with the new decks for the commanders. And when these older versions of sacrifice decks get updated, I guarantee that's going to be in those particular decks. You got like Zulapar Cutthroat that works perfect with this. Blood Artist works perfect with these. These type of cards are going to be very synergistic with the Plume of the Forbidden. Alrighty, so then we go on to the next one, which has a little bit going against it, which is Stormkilled Artist. So the Stormkilled Artist is a little bit weaker as far as the price is. This is the most played card so far, and it does have a lot of combinations, but the problem with Stormkilled Artist is in the Commander deck. So it does have that going against it because the supply is going to be a lot higher for the Stormkilled Artist and doesn't need to just be shooed into that Commander deck. A lot of the week 1 gains are going to be from updating the Commander decks, and that can be a video for another day of what cards go great from the Commander 2021, other known as Strixhaven Commander, and they update the current lists of those pre-constructed decks. So the Stormkilled Artist is already in the blue-red one, so those people, that won't be adding towards the demand and stripping the supply of these ones. So it's going to take a little bit longer than something like Plume that I believe is not in any commander. I might have missed it there. But this ability is very, very good. It's 4 mana for a 2/2. As in my video on the Rogue Deck Builder, I said this reminds me a lot of Pitiless Plunderer, which the foils of Pitiless Plunderer are super expensive in the $20 range at the moment, and the normals are up to like $6. And yes, we are in a post collector's edition world, where it's going to be harder for foils to go up. The foil multiplier is much less than it used to be, especially for uncommons. But I still think that the just regular supply of these in the normal version is going to be as high as, or as low as any other set before it, like the Ixalans, like the Amonkhet's and whatnot. So 2-3 years down the road, this is going to be a highly sought after card for decks to be putting in. I mean, it's very, very powerful. Whenever you cast an sorcery spell, create a treasure token. You can storm off like crazy. It's got a name in its name, Stormkilled Artist, and it also has the ability of getting +1/+0 for every artifact you control, which I don't know how much. I mean, it's just an added ability to this card. So I think this is kind of the perfect card. It's one of the more powerful cards out of the set. Casual, competitive, everything in between are going to like this card. It's going to have a lot of wombo combos. It's going to I think it's going to be a very beloved card going forward for Commander. As you can see with the price data, it is still kind of stagnant here. I did see some movement as far as quantities are concerned for this particular card. It is played in tons of decks, so a bunch of these decks have been wanting to throw this dude in their deck. All right, so on to the next uncommon, which is going to be the Mortality Spear. Mortality Spear is very low, so this has two things going against it. It is going to be a promo pack promo. So that's what they replaced F&M promos with. So Mortality Spear is going to get additional supply from there. And it is in the Golgari deck, or the Witherbloom deck from the Commander 2021. However, this is one of the most played cards as far as multicolored cards are concerned. If we go back over to the Strixhaven list, it actually comes up here as the third most played by percentage, and 21% of all Golgari decks that have been added. A lot of this, of course, is both of these are giving a little bit of a missed signal because people do just post their Commander 2021 decks and they're not cutting these cards, and so any upgraded versions, they're like, oh, let's go ahead and keep these two cards. But I do believe that this is going to be a card that's going to be used in Commander for years to come because it's one of the better cards in its slot. For 4 mana, you can destroy any non-land permanent. That is very good in the Commander format. If you somehow can gain some life, it's 2 less, which isn't hard for like a Golgari deck to do. And you know, it's a 2 mana instant at that point. So this is kind of a silver bullet for the format. 4 mana is very, very reasonable. It's going to go into a lot of decks, which will outstretch the supply for this card. If we look at the kind of the price history of it, it is quite stable. Again, it does have those promo packs, and it does have a lot of ways it is entering into the supply chain. But eventually, I do believe this is going to get outstretched. I don't know how able this card is to be reprinted. I guess any Golgari deck that wants to gain life, they'll probably reprint it in those decks. We'll just have to wait and see, though, but I still think that there will be enough demand to outstretch the supply for this particular card. All right, on to the next one is Joffrey Ghostforge. Joffrey Ghostforge is another one that just has a low price tag, comparatively speaking, to how much it does see play and how much I think it's going to be shoot into many different decks. So as you can see right now, it's mainly used as a commander, but there are many other commanders that have thrown this card in. Boros are always desperate for different ways to play the game. Usually Boros is just smash face. However, Joffrey Ghostforge does give it kind of a tokens kind of sacrifice type strategy. There have been some cool combinations that have been identified with Joffrey. Things like Anointed Procession are able to then copy those tokens to get even more value. So an ETB type effect is going to be very good with the Joffrey Ghostforge. It's very reasonably be costed at 5 mana for a 4/5. It gives your spirits +1/+1 trample and haste, so it's got that going for it, and it fits very well in this new Age of Commander, where it hits the sweet spot for both casual and something that does have some wombo combo-y or at least synergistic value to it. So right now, I think that the price tag, comparatively speaking, for other cards, other mythics, at this point is very, very low for this particular card, and it does have a bright future ahead of it when it does flatten out, and it will start to go up. Very, very similar to other Ixalan cards that started off down at this $2-3 range that do see Commander play. All right, on to the next one, which is Valentine, Dean of the Vayne. This is another card that I think is Valentine is interesting because I think it's like legacy playable in sideboards, and I definitely think it's modern Pioneer standard playable. Valentine, I think, is going to be less of if it's just mono black, I think it'd have more going for it for Commander. There are many people that do like to add these particular, especially in the more competitive EDH, in their 100 just as hate bear type cards. So it's got the rest in peace effect on it. If non-token creature and opponent control would die, exile instead. If you do, you can pay 2 to create a pest. That's kind of a neat little ability, but just a 1 mana card that shuts down graveyards is exactly what you want to see in a more competitive environment. But the Lisette, the opposite side of this is when you gain life, you may pay 1. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, and those creatures gain trample. This one is a lot more interesting because it's every creature. 4 mana, you're able to, every time you gain life, pump up all your creatures. It's going to be going in a lot of the +1/+1 counters matters type decks. Golgari has a huge history of having those +1/+1 counters. Also works with life gain. Those are very, very common from commanders for the Golgari. And the price tag is just very, very low, again, comparatively speaking to other cards that see just the same amount of play as this particular card. It's not that popular as a commander at the moment for this particular card, but if you do scroll down, this card is seeing more play than a lot of other cards in this little slot that are going for $2 to $3 for cards. So what I like about it too is it does have the aforementioned double dipping in, like, if it does see legacy play, if it does see standard play. It's one of the cards that I think has potential from this set, which this seems to be a power reset with the since Zendikar has been a power reset from the Ikoria Theros and Throne of Eldraine. So a card that actually does have the potential for hitting older formats, there it is right there in 303 decks, is going to age well for these particular cards. So with Commander also stripping the supply of this, I like Valentine a lot. Alrighty, so that brings us to a card that I think is a bit of a sleeper. I'm not sure if this, I couldn't find it in another deck or anywhere else, is the Accomplished Alchemist. These type of cards these are historically sleeper cards. So anything that works off of gaining life, people pass it up at the very first. And then people realize, wow, this card can get busted very quickly. So at X mana of any one color, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn, there are many spells that can gain you a lot more life than you put in mana. So think of something like Weather the Storm, or think of the life from, what's the 8 mana? Gain 8 life for 1 mana. Spell. There are plenty of other cards that just there's a gain 6 life for 2 mana. So you can pump into those. There are plenty of other commanders that gain life when things happen. The Accomplished Alchemist then generate a ton of mana for just the easy ability of gaining life. And it's going to go in every one of those commander decks, Selesnya decks that have life gain, Golgari decks that have life gain, Mono Green that have life gain, any other color combination imaginable has life gain. This is going to be shooed into those particular decks. And this is one of those cards that gets better and better and better and better and better as more cards are printed, more life gain commanders are printed, more you name it. When when there's any sort of gain life commander with green, I think people are going to throw this in the deck. So it's going to go in more and more as time goes on, and the supply will get outstretched by the demand. So Accomplished Alchemist, I'm very bullish right now at its price tag. Of course, I don't think I'd play the full premium for it. It looks like it is going for, not much at all, just 60 cents. Is all it's going for. It's seeing play in plenty amount of commanders at the moment, but I would pay like a quarter all day long for this card and wait long term for it to go up in value. I do believe in a year or two you're going to see a buy list that's going to be higher than this particular buy-in price, which in the scope of things isn't that bad of an investment. So Accomplished Alchemist, I think, is a really good card to be paying for, even at its price tag, anything up from a quarter to where it's at. For a long-term spec. All right, now we get into kind of the juicy stuff here, which is the first one is Crackle with Power. Crackle with Power is another underrated mythic, comparatively speaking to how much it is seeing play. Never, ever, ever, ever underestimate the power of Timmies. And Timmies love cards like this. This is going to be a sought after. The thing that this is a mythic, so mythics are going to have a fraction of the supply of the other rarities, and Timmies are just going to eat this card up with the Crackle of Power. It has a very reasonable price right now, $4 going down. It's another card you want to find the bottom and then start getting into this particular card. It's a weird card because you have to dump in a ton of mana, but it gets more reasonable with the more mana you have. It's going to start doing a lot of damage, and you can actually end the game quite quickly with this particular card. With huge mana dumps, kill all 3 of your opponents, and just win the game. So Crackle with Power, it is a sleeper, in my opinion, as far as its price tag is concerned. If you actually look at Crackle with Power comparatively to other mythics, I believe is the first major mythic at, if you look at actually the decks, in 222 decks. So let's go up and see where we're at with other mythics that are above it, because I think a lot of them were in the multicolored. So yeah, 162 with Blot Out the Sky, Rowan 163, Silvercoat 186. So it's still higher, still in more decks. We have up to Beladros at 324. So then that's, so you can see the huge price description at 222 versus Beladros, which is, you know, the flavor of the week for the commander. So Beladros is going to, I think, have a lot less going for it as time goes on, especially things like Shadrix too, when people actually build those decks. But if you compare it to other mythics with similar playabilities, you see that they're higher right now than Crackle with Power. So something's got to give there. It's a lot easier to put in many decks. So I think this is the good mythic for the kind of the Timmy mythic out of every set that does go up in value long term. Now we get on to my favorite one for the Strixhaven, and this is the Sedgemore Witch. Sedgemore Witch is a very unique ability. It's a young pyromancer for 1 more mana with ward, which actually isn't that relevant in Commander. Paying 3 life is nothing. It does have menace, but it does have the young pyromancer ability, and it also creates a little bit better than just elemental tokens with pest creature tokens that actually gain life. So Black does want to generate a lot of tokens, especially Orzhov. And if you actually look at Orzhov lists, they cast a lot of spells. And casting a lot of spells equaling more and more pest creatures to then utilize as a fodder for their other stuff. I think this deck is going to go in so many commanders, and we're going to start seeing it updated in many of the more traditional commanders that people have built in the past. The Taces, I'm thinking the Jund commander, that the Corvalds. Those are, if there's a Corvald even right there that's already utilizing it, that are going to want these fodders, and it's one of the easiest way to just gain a lot of copies of, or a lot of pests, a lot of creature tokens to then use as fodder. And it's very undervalued even at this point with the price tag. It's another card that I actually do think is playable in formats of like the legacies, like the moderns, like the pioneers, like the standards, as the ability it is still a pretty aggressive card. The ward is great. The menace is great. It's got a lot of things going for it right now in standard that I could see it using a deck even post rotation. So I think this is the real sleeper of the set, regardless of even commander. That is one of the more powerful cards, and it's the one that I'm definitely most excited price-wise versus how much it costs at the moment. Look, it's going for the same amount that some of these rares that see have a lot less potential are already going for in the Strixhaven format. So you can scroll through here and see many rares are even already at higher value than this particular card. And I don't think it's unreasonable for a card of if anything has taught us of the price of rares able to go up to the $4 or $5, $6 range just by having, you know, slight amount of commander demand or standard demand, then that this is the perfect situation for this card to follow suit. So I like Sedgemore Witch. So anyway, there is my top 10 cards for Strixhaven. I'm going to try to do a video tomorrow, possibly not tomorrow, but I'm going to try to get another video out of cards that are going to be going in to these buggers. So the most popular commanders out of Strixhaven, those are something you also want to look at and be aware of, because Exodus is going to spike cards, Gallows is going to spike cards. So looking at the lists of what people are starting to put in these decks also have the potential of going up very substantially. I actually identified one in the yesterday's Market Monday that has already gone through the roof for Exodus, which is an old common from Tempest. I can't remember exactly what it was called, but you can go watch that video for that card. And it's already gone way up in value. There are very few cards in the lightly played or near mint that are at reasonable prices now, after the course of me talking about it and other people talking about it, or just people identifying that it's a really good card for that deck. So we'll have a part 2 to this of those particular cards. Kind of a longer video. Was hoping to go a little bit quicker for this, but I hope this information has been helpful to you. As always, looking forward to your comments in the comment section below. This has been Kevin with the Rogue Market. Thanks for watching.